Hello, my name is Charlie Blanton, and this is me video. I wanted to bring up what I've learned this semester in your class. Myself, I am a biology teacher here at Jefferson Community College, and as you can see, the demonstration room I'm actually in is the Academic Success Center. This is where I've learned, have taught students, and have learned much about myself as well as becoming a teacher. It's been an adventure. It's all together. And starting off, I'm going over the own issues I've learned. More or less how it relates to week 3. Knowing my own anxiety from the past, knowing the issues I have faced, and knowing my overreaction, to how I've overcome those challenges for the better. And the first one is knowing, how do I separate the reality from my own imagination? How do I take knowing if I've overthinking, oh no, if I've overdone an issue, I've taught a lesson bad, but also knowing, actually I did a really good job, which what I've seen mostly come from, like, say, week 1, where I did not teach the microscope concept as well as I thought I did. But in reality, I taught myself, I made a mistake, I did better. And with that, going forward, keeping a good tone around myself and my students, giving a voice of confidence, giving a voice of reason for everybody. But also when it comes to my communication skills, I used to stutter a lot, and knowing the right terms to use. So that's why I don't confuse my students, but also not to the point where they just say, oh, it's just saying some random words. In a more of a term, like, say, a subject in microbiology in which I tutor, is sort of, how do viruses reproduce? How do they get from one subject to the next? And in that, I can teach my students, instead of using a scientific term or a scientific usage for those words, I will simplify it for them. This way, they're not confused on the subject, but they can relate to something that they'll remember so much more easier. But also keeping a good professional standard among in-person contact, but also among my communication via email. Knowing when to say, hey, I can meet up at these times, but also showing that I'm also a professor now. So there's a certain level of hierarchy, there's a certain level of respect, I sort of demand, I expect from my students, but at the same time, I don't want to give off a vibe that I'm totally negative. I'm totally wanted to be this super strict professor. And I'm still learning to this day. But going from there, well, that's how week 4 went. I've come to overcome some obstacles when it comes to being a teacher. It has been issues of knowing right from wrong, having own confidence in myself, but also being the level-headed one in the classroom, being calm, cool, collected when it comes to either being a tutor or a teacher. But also when my students have troubles. Because when I was a student, if I didn't know a subject, my first reaction was to freak out. My first reaction was to see how, like, what's going on, or what I give off as a professor. Knowing when I'm in a bad mood, when I'm in, I don't want to give off the vibe as a super strict. I don't want my students to fear. I want them to be relaxed in the classroom. I want them to know what's right from wrong. But also knowing overall that I can be approachable. So this way they can know that I'm also human. I'm not some person who's just use them as a number, as a grade. But also knowing from understanding the first and second orders of reality, which ties back into the assessment. So knowing that if I make mistakes, like say my first week, when I mess up the microscope lesson, I may think, okay, I messed up. In the back of my mind, I may think, my students might think, I can't teach. This is a very incompetent teacher. But in reality, mistakes happen. And overall, just knowing I can do better. Going from there on to week 6, knowing the verbal cues of what my students are going through. So knowing, is my student, is it a slow morning? Are they just drifting off into space? Are they zoning out? Or how can I catch their attention? which has been really, really interesting all up together. Knowing that I can give my students a good lesson, how to get them going again. Because we've all had those slow moments where it's like, I really don't want to be in class. I don't want to be here. We all had those mornings, either as a teacher, a student, even in grad students. Knowing that paralanguage and know how I've been there. I've had my mornings where I don't want to be here. I've had the mornings where it's been hard to teach, but I've gotten past that. Going on and relating that to, say, week 8, knowing my emotions from the, if I'm having a bad day, if my students are having a bad day. I've had students have panic attacks and knowing, say, hey, everything's going to be calm, everything's going to be all right. Also knowing, when a student does bad on a test, knowing when my students do bad on a test and saying, hey, you made a mistake, but you just have to do better. You just have to keep calm and just say, I'm going to do better. And not think with the fallacy, the fallacy of cash up at expectations, knowing that it's not the end of the world. You just got to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and go for it again. And finally, wrapping up with how I have made the climate easier. I try to dress up and get more approachable as a more of a laid-back professor. And talking beach shirts, cargo shorts. It's weird, but I want to give off a vibe that I am very approachable, laid-back, easygoing, but also that I'm intelligent and I can give off that anything the students have questions for, I feel them the answers to. I want to have an honest bond with my students, like my family has had. My family has always been laid back, but it's also given me time to explain myself, knowing how to keep a good, honest vibe in the classroom. But overall, this is me video, and I've enjoyed this class, and thank you very much.